Okay, California history scholars. Have you reading about Upton Sinclair, this amazing sort of popular author, extremely popular author, who was, also a social engineer, very idealistic about a bunch of things. And he runs for governor and with this epic campaign. And so it almost wins. And frankly, it's a brutal sort of story about Hollywood gets behind crushing his campaign. But the main thing is this: we're in this world before progressivism, before World War II, and there's a lot of options in California. A lot of social reforming ideas. A lot of people feeling like the California holds a type of situation here where we can build something new. We can change the world. And so I want to talk about a couple of just little things, just to give you a range of things here, especially about land and about how, today, probably you, certainly my children, are very inhibited by the price of land, the price of renting, the price of living here. And that restricts your mindset. That, I think it very much affects colleges in that we go to college now not to think big and grandly, but to, put your head in a pencil sharpener so that you can get out of here with a job. So don't fear jobs. You're all smart, but you got to come and, we got to think big. And so California was a place before the World War II, before the Depression especially, where there were a lot of ideas. And Upton Sinclair's is certainly the grandest. We're going to end poverty in California. But there was always this idea that in California there's enough here that we don't have to have poverty. We don't have to have even the problems of urbanization and the problems of the super rich. We can actually create a type of agrarian utopia. Okay, so let's just people came to California. This guy Tharp shows up here, 1858. He shows up there in the big trees, when those mango trees in the Kauai, up above Kauai River, and he builds a house out of a tree. See, there's his entrance. I've been up there. It's really cool to go see it. And then you walk in, and it's he's got it's like a tiny house, man. And you could walk out here, and if you're a loner type of thing, you could make your life. Okay. This is Galen Clark. And this, of course, is John Muir. Look at those eyes, man. Woo! These are big thinking people who are quite willing to live alone, quite willing to love the mountains, and just to go up there. Galen Clark becomes eventually the guardian of Yosemite while the state park is transitioning into the national park. And then John Muir, of course, wrote all about it and stuff and makes himself famous. Most of the people, like Tharp, who go out and live in the woods, they never write stories about it. They don't publish articles. And so, they just live. Okay, so there's that, you can do that. But as we've talked about, and we'll talk about at the end of this, those options are diminishing. Those options become harder to find. In one of the great stories of California is this cooperative colony of Kauai. This is up by Tharp there. It's just below Yosemite. It's where you see in the big trees, these monster trees. And what happens is that inspired by the writings, and these are ideas, people. There are usually some books behind this, is a type of scientific socialism. Okay? Edward Bellamy had written this book about how how the world can be reorganized, and it's called Looking Backward, and so what you have is these folks who come out here and they want to set up a type of communist society. Karl Marx had written his great book, and how can we not have capitalism, but also not be fully communistic? And you can work this middle ground area in different ways. Now, this is a secular version, and then a lot of religious people come out here to set up religious utopias. And so secular and religious, a type of separation here. These guys, get up there. This is the Karl Marx tree that they're in front of, what is now, I think, the General Sherman. They renamed it now that it's a national park and stuff. But look at these people. Look at their hat, man. I like these hats. Look at that. Yeah, why does he not have a hat? But visionaries, okay? Visionaries on how to have a new way of living. Now, what happens to them? A lot of stories as to why it falls, but it probably falls apart because the ideas become entrenched in their money's in logging, and they want to build a railroad, and that they have to go into debt, and then that collapses them. That's what destroys a lot of people's dreams, is a type of materialism in which I want a nicer car, I want a nicer van, want a nicer house, want something that collapses their options because they become debtors, okay? One of the most interesting ideas, at least I think, is a type of tiny house idea, which we, sort of popular today, but it's called Little Landers, okay? And here again, inspired by books written elsewhere, the idea that lower your expectations, lower your wants and needs, get a community together, and you can make something work. This one is in San Ysidro, which is just south of us in the Tijuana River Valley there, right on the border with Mexico. The most valuable of all arts will be the art of deriving a comfortable subsistence from the smallest area of soil. It's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. I suspect it's a much more sort of maxim that's more common than that, because you see this a lot, and I'll show you another one, but Lincoln gets associated with great statements, but that's a good one. The most valuable of all arts will be the art of deriving a comfortable subsistence from the smallest area of soil. So the basic idea, and this one's in Tahunga, which is, here's Los Angeles, Glendale, you go back in here, and what you do is and there's one up in Hayward, up near Hayward in the Bay Area, North Bay Area. So this is in San Ysidro and in Tahunga and up near Hayward, is to have a group of tiny houses in a rural area where they can all have their small farm operation, their small, they'll just, basically almost a gardening operation. They'll share tools, share help, and then they all go in together into Los Angeles or to San Ysidro into San Diego to sell their goods. And so you have a market, and you build close enough to the market. You see, they're up in here. Yeah, up in here. And you head out. Head out here, and get down into Los Angeles here. And so you see, this is where the 210 is now. But you get up in here, and you're free. You see, land is cheap, it's free, but you can sell and make your living tied in between a big city. This is the building that's left over from the home of the Little Landers Historical Society. When you're up in Tahunga, you can go visit it. Here's another option. This one's a women's option. A women's magazine editor. He decides to create a type of colony. His name is Edward Gardner Lewis. Okay, and this is a Tascadero. When you're driving up Highway 101, okay, you're out of here, you're going up here, you're going past Santa Barbara, you cut up Gaviota Pass, and then there's San Luis Obispo over hill in San Luis Obispo. That's Cuesta Grade. Before you get to Paso Robles is Atascadero. And you can actually see this building. They've done a great job redoing it. You can see the top of this from the freeway when you're driving by. Well, get off the freeway, drive over there and walk around it, because it is fascinating. And what's interesting about it is that on the front of this is a completely symmetrical building, and on the front of every facade is a different motto. And on one of the sides is this statement here. But the goal of this society here was to, going the wrong way, was to give primarily women. I don't think it was completely restricted to women, but women who divorced, women or widows, women in need of some way, could come out here and get a little piece of land, have their garden, and then there'd be like a market, big mall-like thing where they could share. And so between, this meeting house where the big ideas are proposed, and then actually an economy. So you have to create a way to make money. So you need this economic market, but at the same time, everyone has their own little plot. So it's private. It's not socialist. It's not communist in the way of what we think of that, where there's no private property. There's private property, and there's private property with the little landers, but they're headed in that direction. And these options were much more viable back before World War II. And they're still viable today, but probably not here in California, certainly not coastal California. Now, talk about coastal California. This is Point Loma, of course. This is us. This is the Greek Theater, which is right there. And we are sitting about right there, okay? That's maybe a little farther away, maybe about right there. But the thing is here you have, but in 1897, an organization, a religious, theosophical, philosophical organization deciding that they've got, and this has a lot of rich people involved with it, and so they can pool their money and buy a big old hunk of Point Loma. And there they're going to build what is a university. They charter it as a university in 1909. They come here in 1897. It's going to have this sort of hotel-like structures. And this is the Aryan Temple, which is going to, all their sort of big ideas and theater stuff in there. This is the what's now Cabrillo Hall, which is across. Actually, they moved it here just before I came, but that's sitting over here now as what it was the headquarters, the international headquarters of the Theosophical Societies. But they would do these Greek ideas. They would have Egyptian ideas. Camp Karnak was over here, and they had an Egyptian gate on DuPont Street. And it's all led by this woman, Catherine Tingley, who sees also that this should be a type of agricultural station, that by growing plants here, we can actually become a feeder to changing the whole surface of Southern California. Trees, palm trees, Australian jacarandas, and all sorts of stuff, making this place a more beautiful place. It's not any one thing. It's a grand plan, to create something here in California that will transform the world. This is the peace conference that was in the Greek. This is where you will graduate soon to be, hopefully. And then my department is sitting right up there. This building's fallen in over the cliff into the soccer field below. But this was the grand plan. And there's a little school associated with it too. So what I'm getting at is just there's a number of these options available. You can come up by yourself and find a little corner for yourself somewhere in California. You can come out here as a small group, a collective, and do something that's interesting. You can come out here with some really grand plans and do something interesting. This is the Scripps family, two very wealthy people, Ellen Scripps and her little brother Edward. This is Scripps Ranch. This is Miramar, where Scripps built his house. He called it Miramar. That's why you have that Miramar Road and all that sort of stuff out there in Scripps Ranch. And they bring in lots and lots and lots of eucalyptus trees. Eucalyptus trees were idealistic trees. You know, we can make California actually change its climate by planting enough of these trees. They'll catch the fog and drop it, and the eucalyptus trees, there's tremendous amount of idealism about eucalyptus trees. And then over in La Jolla, Ellen Scripps, as you read already in that earlier thing on Ellen Scripps, creates a type of women's utopia or a women's community in La Jolla. And this is the La Jolla Women's Club. Very modernist design at the time. Still looks very modernist, doesn't it? Done in 1914. And so what you have is an interesting, this is completely, everyone sort of just associates with each other in La Jolla with these type of, if you're a dominant, powerful, interesting woman, you want to go live in La Jolla. And so that's where you congregate. And Ellen Scripps and her sister sort of rule over this, not rule, they sort of are the impresarios of this in many ways. So what we're talking about is not just your individual family coming out here to set up a little suburban home. We're talking about communal thought, and communal thought that's high-minded about changing the world in many ways. Now, there's another type of communal thought, which is what goes back to what's always been here, is the progressive help, especially before the World War II, when land was still available to actually create Indian reservations. In the 1870s, this became a sort of national federal agenda to actually help the Indians recreate themselves. Okay, so this is what reservations are about, and so you get what started with Helen Hunt Jackson coming out here along with Abbott Kinney, going around and they did the sort of forward field work for the federal government, created this the condition and needs of the Indians. But notice, okay, the Rincon are still where they've always been. The Pala are still there where they've always been. And so let's go back and reaffirm them in ownership of their own land. And eventually this does, and we'll talk more about this at the end of class. You do get Indian reservations in a much more interesting way, but you do get these set up under largely Ulysses S. Grant's presidency, and then later under right before the World War II, while the Depression is going on, there's a real federal government desire out of FDR's administration to help these Indians recreate their sort of independent community living, okay? And so you get a number of these, and I throw these in. I bring them in because I think it's an interesting juxtaposition of this is, I think, maybe the legacy, the most extensive, interesting legacy of this period before World War II, where people were going to use land in interesting ways, which were not just capitalist, which were not socialist, communistic, but were something new and different, and something especially to be self-sustaining if you could pull it off. And so this is the Rincon Reservation today, and it's they have their own fire department, they're technically a type of independent nation, a ward of the federal government, and they are the Rincon Band of Liseño Indians, and they have their seal. Here's the tribal chieftain, and I'm not sure, pretty sure he's the tribal chieftain. She may be an officer of some type, I don't know. But then, so let's end up is we talked about last time Margaret Eaton and going out and living in the tidal zone of Santa Cruz Island. And you can't homestead. Homestead actually gets you your property, eventually becomes yours. This is where you just squat. You're a squatter. And those squatters eventually get removed by a lot of progressive ideas of beautification and conservation, national parks and stuff, pushing out the Indians, pushing out the squatters, and then making it type of a safe, beautiful, ordered, middle-class place to go visit. And then certainly the problems of land and land ownership and the cost of land ownership that happens after World War II just explodes to the extent that these ideas of little landers, which I think is fascinating, or the idea that Atascadero could be a woman's community that was really supportive of women independence in their own gardens and handiworks and stuff like that. By the way, the psychology building next to us right over here was the handiworks craft center of the Utopian colony here. So crafts, agriculture, there was just all sorts of ideas. And in many ways, your existence has collapsed a lot of what, and sadly, I'm thinking of my own children, their options of what can happen in California are very limited in comparison to what was before World War II.